Welcome back, everyone. We're kicking off the year by taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating. The stock market's biggest winners of 2024.
Sounds good.
The S&P 500, the big benchmark, it was up a respectable 25%.
Not bad at all.
Not bad at all, but some companies just completely left that in the dust.
Oh, yeah.
And what's really interesting is there's a theme connecting a lot of them.
I bet I can guess.
AI, artificial intelligence.
You have to be right.
Yeah, it's everywhere. We're going to look at why companies like Palantir Vistra, NVIDIA, GE, Vernova, and Axon Enterprise just absolutely soared in 2024.
Should be fascinating to unpack that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found so interesting about this whole AI boom is how it's impacting companies that you wouldn't think of as, tech companies.
Oh, absolutely.
Like take Vistra, for example. They're a power generation company.
Okay, yeah.
Not exactly, Silicon Valley cutting edge.
Not the first thing that comes to mind.
Right. But when you think about it, all those AI systems, those massive data centers, they need a ton of power. And Vistra is right there to provide it. Their revenue was up 13% last year, and their net income was up 38%.
Wow.
So they're not developing the algorithms or anything, but they're absolutely essential to making it all work.
It's a great example of those ripple effects.
Yeah.
One industry booming, and it lifts up another in a way you might not have predicted.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point for anyone listening. Like, think about the industry you're in or the companies you follow. What are the maybe less obvious ways that AI might be impacting them? Maybe it's creating opportunities or maybe it's presenting some challenges.
Yeah, you got to think outside the box on this one.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to a company that is very much in the AI game, Palantir.
Okay.
Now, their stock nearly tripled in 2023, which is already pretty impressive.
For sure.
But in 2024, they saw a 370% increase.
Seriously.
It's insane.
That is wild.
It really is. What's fascinating about Palantir is that they're not just, developing AI for the sake of it. They're actually using it to solve some really complex problems.
Like what kinds of problems?
Well, they work with governments and businesses on things like investigations, fraud detection, even predicting supply chain disruptions.
Wow. So they're finding real-world applications.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of why investors are so excited about them. They're seeing that Palantir's AI is actually making a tangible difference.
So it's not just hype, it's actually delivering.
Yeah. And we could talk about how certain analysts recommended Palantir and companies like NVIDIA way back when.
Sure.
But I think what's more important is understanding why they were so bullish on these companies.
Yeah, I agree.
They saw the potential of AI to solve these real-world problems and generate real revenue.
It's a good lesson for investors.
Right?
Don't chase hype. Do the research.
I understand the companies, the tech, the potential, and don't get caught up in the buzzwords.
Yeah, buzzwords won't make you money.
Speaking of companies generating revenue, let's talk about NVIDIA. They are basically the undisputed king of AI chips.
The big dog.
Yeah, their stock nearly doubled in 2024, a 182% increase, and everyone is just clamoring to get their hands on their products.
Well, yeah, everyone needs those chips to run these AI systems.
Right. It's like the gold rush, but for AI chips.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA is holding all the picks and shovels.
And everyone from those tiny startups to those massive tech companies needs what they're digging up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the big question now is, can NVIDIA keep this up? I mean, are there any competitors on the horizon or any, technological shifts that could change the game?
That's always the question, right? Who's going to be the next big thing?
All right. Next up, we have a company with a really interesting story, GE Vernova.
Okay, I don't think I'm familiar with them.
So they're the power grid infrastructure part of General Electric that was spun off.
Interesting.
And they've been having a phenomenal year. Their stock is up 146%.
It's huge.
And again, you can tie their success back to the AI boom.
How so?
Well, think about it. All those data centers that power AI development, they're putting a huge strain on the power grid.
Right.
So companies like GE Vernova that specialize in grid infrastructure, they're in high demand.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's a great example of what's called a super cycle.
I've heard that term before.
It's basically like a really prolonged period of high demand and investment in a particular sector.
Kind of like the dot-com boom back in the day?
Yeah, exactly. Or like the railway boom in the 19th century. When you can identify these super cycles early on, it can be really lucrative for investors.
But the trick is, actually being able to identify them.
Right, and that takes understanding the underlying trends and being able to see where the puck is going.
Not where it's been.
Exactly. Okay, last but not least, we have Axon Enterprise.
The taser company.
You got it. They're best known for their tasers, but they've been quietly expanding their role in law enforcement technology.
Okay.
and it's paying off big time.
Right.
They had a 141% stock increase last year, 11 straight quarters of over 25% growth, and a 36% revenue jump in Q3 alone.
That's a serious track record.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that Axon is really smart about how they're capitalizing on the increasing role of technology in law enforcement.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they're not just selling tasers anymore.
Yeah.
They've got body cameras, data management systems, training platforms.
They're covering a lot of bases.
They are. And investors are seeing that this is a trend that's not going away.
Absolutely. So we've seen some really incredible winners here. But as always, past performance isn't a guarantee of future success.
Right. Just because a company did well in 2024 doesn't mean it's going to do well in 2025.
Exactly. And some of these high-flying stocks might actually be overvalued at this point.
So what should investors be looking for?
Well, I think the key is to not get caught up in the hype and instead focus on companies that might be undervalued relative to their potential. Do the research, look for those hidden gems that are just starting to ride that wave of growth.
Those are the ones that could really take off.
Exactly.
So I think the big takeaway here is that the AI revolution, it's not just science fiction anymore.
It's here.
It's here. It's impacting companies across all sorts of different sectors, and it's creating winners in places that you might not expect.
Absolutely. And it's just getting started.
Right. So I want to leave you with a thought. What industries or companies haven't we talked about today that could be poised for AI-driven growth in the next few years? It's a question worth pondering as you navigate the market.
Definitely food for thought.
That's all for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.